Well, I'm just going to be blunt. Eventually, this podcast is going to get me on a watch list. It's just pure and simple. Today's episode is about Pine Gap. Pine Gap is Area 52 or Australia's Area 51. It is a satellite relay station that is supposed to have about 40% of East Asia, Australia, Russia, like basically 40% of that part of the world completely covered by spy satellites. Good morning. Make sure this thing is on. I'm gonna take a dab, and then I'm gonna tell you what this episode's gonna be about. I'm trying to get a longer episode for you guys, because a few of you guys have asked. Today's episode's gonna be a really good one. I'm gonna be creating master threads of all of my research. That way, people that subscribe to my Patreon can then go ahead and have all of that research for themselves and do whatever the fuck they want with it. I don't know when I'm going to unroll that. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get this going. I'll be right back. I'll let you guys know what today's episode's about. New Easter egg on the channel. Let me make sure I got the vocal cords where they need to be. So, I'm just going to preface. Well, I'm just going to be blunt. Eventually, this podcast is going to get me on a watch list. It's just pure and simple. The stuff I talk about is very sensitive. Granted, I'm not the first person to talk about it, so I should be totally safe. But usually, once people start talking about sensitive topics, you're gonna land on a watch list. Usually, that's about it. You know, most whistleblowers are very safe. Shout out to Joe Biden. He actually passed a piece of legislation that will benefit me if I do get big. I don't know much about it, but he passed legislation that essentially offers witness protection for whistleblowers, and no other president before him did that. So this is a very apolitical episode. I personally am not a fan of Biden, but that is a very good thing that he did, and I think only idiots would say that that wasn't a good thing. So anyways, without further ado, let's talk about today's topic. It's a very, very long and deep topic. That's why I said I'm going to create a master thread of all my research, because, dude, simply put, guys, I couldn't get through all of this research in 1 week. The sheer amount of evidence that's out there is crazy. But here's the fucking kicker. About 60-ish% of the material I'm finding is from Australia. It's not American material. So, you're putting a VPN on, you're pretending you're in a different country, you're, skirting the system so you can access material that you can't find in your home country. For the more innocent usage out there, it protects your internet searching, and it allows you to mask where you are. I do that for the sake of accessing material in that home source. Today's episode is about Pine Gap. Pine Gap is Area 52 or Australia's Area 51. Okay. And again, I don't know much about this. We're researching it together. There's going to be a lot of me quoting direct research. So bear with me. This one's going to be kind of a rockier episode, but there's going to be a lot more material in this one. So I'm just going to give you a brief rundown of the history of Pine Gap. There's going to be some conjecture. There's going to be some speculation. And the reason why is because, of course, nobody that I've gotten this material from has a security clearance. And I'll just be frank, any material I did get from somebody with a security clearance would get both of us in a shit ton of trouble. So, publicly available data, let's just go from the top. Sometime in the 1960s, the United States government enters into secret talks with the Australian government on the topic of constructing a satellite relay station somewhere in Australia's inland. Now, pause. Technically, right now, this is the official usage of Pine Gap. Damn, you can see I'm stoned. This is the official usage of Pine Gap. It is a satellite relay station that is supposed to have about 40% of East Asia, Australia, Russia, like basically 40% of that part of the world completely covered by spy satellites. Because, let's be frank, what was going on in the 60s? Vietnam and the end of, the Korean War. Cold War was very, very aggressive during that time. So we needed really good spy satellites, and that's the official usage of what Pine Gap is. And nobody's denying that that doesn't also occur there. We're just saying there's extra stuff going on there. Similar with Area 51. Okay. USGS, the United States Geological Survey, begins to study geological maps and surveys of inland Australia. In either 64 or 65, Central Australia is selected as the region to construct the facility. It's literally smack dab in the middle of Australia, which is pretty cool. I don't know how they did it, but they said there was a guy, I watched like a TikTok about it, and he said that there was about a 0.5% difference from the actual geographical center of the country. So it's really cool. I'm very nerdy about stupid shit like that, so I think that that kind of stuff is cool. But it just goes to show even the Egyptians were still more advanced than us as far as mathematics goes. They would have had that shit perfect. Anyways, request is made to the Australian government to provide suggested locations to construct the facility. Proposed site is offered to the United States of a 25-acre piece of land owned by the Australian Air Force with the option of expanding the land holding. The site, located only 7 kilometers from the town center of Alice Springs, which is technically where this is located, is inspected by the U.S. government but found unsuitable. The U.S. government decides instead on Alice Springs environs as the site for the future facility. And then, so this is also right next to the McDonald Ranges. The McDonald Ranges are just northwest of the Pine Gap Research Facility. If I remember correctly, I think that that's just like a missile and artillery testing range for the Australian government. Nothing crazy is going on there. They're just testing all of their weaponry, right? You know, just like what we do in Nevada. Nothing crazy, kind of a nothing burger. Moving on. So now we've got some direct timelines. We've got some bulletins. Let's talk about this timeline a little bit. So in May to November of 1966, landowners observed the American drilling teams working on their property southwest of Alice Springs. Okay, no big deal. We're just starting to, break ground. In December of 66, specifically on December 16, announcement is made of a joint Australian-American facility to be constructed near Alice Springs, Northern Territory of Australia. Which, again, it's not really the Northern Territory. It's actually really close to the middle, but Australia is kind of shaped like a very fat boomerang, if you will. So it technically is in the north, but again, it's pretty central, if we're being honest here. And a reminder that this isn't our only base in Australia. I think we have like 9 or 10 bases. This map I'm looking at very bluntly shows 3, but these are just the ones that the CIA is involved in. So, go figure. December 16th, they have that announcement. The project is supposed to be completed over 18 months. The land is selected on Temple Bar Station, owned by Mr. Jim Bullen. January 67, controversy begins. Bullen is asked to volunteer his land to the project. He's offered only 52 cents an acre. Take it or leave it. Bullen asked for fair compensation and an assurance that the facility to be built is a wholly Australian-operated facility and that no military activity be at the proposed base. Huh. Yeah, go fuck yourself. That's what the government said. Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt, by the way, there are people that are killed in this process, and we will get into that. And it is the classic heart attack death, which I do not like. And I will state here and now, my heart is superbly healthy. So you ain't getting me with that bullshit. And I don't go in tall buildings, and I don't do drugs. So I don't have to worry about any of those things. I'm not going to get thrown out of a fucking building. I'm not going to have a heart attack, and I'm not going to overdose. So check those things out right there. And I'm not suicidal either. Okay? So we're gonna check all of those fucking bases real quick. I'm actually the happiest I've ever been. Thank God. So yeah, genuinely, I'm in no way possible going to die anytime soon. So if I do, it wasn't the story that you think it would be. And I will be saying that periodically because again, I talk about shit that's fucking absurd. Let's be honest. Okay, so we're in February of 67. The Australian Prime Minister at the time, his name is Harold Holt, he says there's not going to be any launching, no firing, no military. Oh, no. The Alice Springs member of the Northern Territory government, I don't know what the fuck that means, criticizes the Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt for his non-committal and misconstrued attitude in relation to the information releases from the Americans. Mr. Orr also questions what economic benefit there would even be for Alice Springs to have this base established. So the next month, they continue to protest for fair compensation, get bent. He got paid $470 for 900 acres of land, basically illegally stolen to do here. So this is crazy. This facility is first given the pen name The Space Base. It is announced that local Alice Springs construction company, Norder Petty Limited, have signed a contract worth $51,485.69. Damn, they got that down. To construct roads, streets, and guttering. Okay, no big deal. 67, still, they're talking to the local site clubs. April of 67, they're talking about reestablishing some form of local government in the military base, just some seniority, some rank, so that way they can compartmentalize. If you guys don't know what compartmentalization is, I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole here, but basically it just means, say you're working on a very big project. They section off each little bit of that project. So you only know your very specific task. You don't know what your coworker's doing, or if you do, he doesn't know what you're doing. Compartmentalization is a huge way that most foreign governments are allowed to get mass research because they funnel it upwards, right? But the guys on the ground don't know what the guys next to them are doing. Only the guys above them figure out what's going on. So that's not really like hidden knowledge either. You can Google that. Just Google, government compartmentalization tactics, and it's fucking readily available. So I'm just giving you the spark notes. In May of 67, Edwin J. Hatt of the Australian Department of Supply is to be placed as officer in charge of security. So there you go. That local government is starting to get attached there. Now, his job title is referred to as executive officer and representative of the Department of Defense. You're starting to get some big wigs in there now, okay? Media releases that month, it says it will house 2 antennae placed under plastic radomes as protection against desert sand, dust, and rain. Further reported to the media by the Australian government. It is believed that the facility will cost in excess of $8 million and will be mainly staffed by Americans. And I want to touch base on that now because if you pause this video, you go to a couple of YouTube videos, just type in Pine Gap. What happens at Pine Gap? Da 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 da. Most people that go there, they will immediately tell you that only the outside security is Australian. Every single personnel inside is American. And that's a little bit suspect. There's no reason in a time of peace that we should have a fully established military base in another country. That's my personal opinion. If you disagree with that, that's fine. But in today's fucking world where we have all of this science and technology, we don't need boots on the ground in hardly any part of the world. Let's be honest, right? We are in a data-driven world. World War III is likely going to be fought with data, and you're seeing that right now. Russia has been cyber attacking the fuck out of America. China's been cyber attacking the fuck out of America. And again, these are things that you can Google, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now because we're talking about this. So the media press release just opened it out a little bit. $8 million staffed by Americans. We don't know if we like that. I know I don't, but I don't know if they, how do they felt. Mr. Charlie Orr said, "We have had the wool pulled over our eyes." This comment came as a result of speculation that Alice Springs would become a target in the event of a military conflict after it was announced the facility would be associated with spy-in-the-sky operations, and that it was in fact a defense facility. You can see right off the rip, this is only 6 months into construction. They're already changing their fucking script very aggressively. At first, it was just going to be a little bit of a joint American, project. They're just going to have a little bit of satellite stuff. No big deal. And then they literally stole the fucking thing from the guy for 40 cents an acre. Let's talk about that. That's disgusting. That's thievery, okay? We're not going to pretend that he got paid for that. He got paid $500 for his almost 1,000-acre land. The facility got the space-based name. They're already lying. So we'll talk more about this here in a bit, guys. I got to go to work, and then I'm going to come back right where I left off. Okay, well, I'm back from work. We're going to just jump right back to where we left off. So to summarize, we're about a year into this project, right? A year into this project. The public announcement for the first time that there was already a secret U.S. facility base in Central Australia, having been in existence since the 1950s. So we just talked about this from, about a year, right? But this is May of 1967. So you're looking at now, potentially a whistleblower, if not a whistleblower, at the very least, a journalist comes out and announces, hey, this has been the case since the 50s. But they didn't say where. So it might not be there. There could be another area nearby, but they did say Central Australia. And remember what I referenced earlier. right? It's in the middle of this. It's in the middle of the country, or technically continent. Technically a continent, but it's in the middle of the country, and that's Central Australia. It says the official name of the facility is PENDAS, the United States, Australia Space Defense Research Facility. That's a whole bunch of nonsense. Okay, it's Pine Gap. The announcement made that the facility will be enclosed by a 50-mile fence. Reported that fence is to prevent motor vehicle entry that might cause radio interference with the facility's equipment. That's silly. We'll get into it deeper. I'm going to go into earthquakes and a bunch of shit that's involved in this location. You guys are going to love this episode. I really promise you. Right now, I'm just talking about, of course, the history of it, what caused it, where, what's the official story. There is a 5-mile long, or I think it's a set of 5-mile long antennas that go underneath the research facility, and it goes directly down towards the center of the earth. Now, obviously, in the grand scheme of things, 5 miles towards the center of the earth is nothing. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it is. That doesn't even get through the crust, right? But there's this like magnetic thing that they do, and apparently they can actually recharge submarines that are offshore. Yeah. So remember that earlier episode about Nikola Tesla and wireless energy and communication? And you remember how I told you that the United States government fucking stole his patents right after he died? Remember when I told you all of these things? Remember that? Less than 20 years later, they are fucking recharging submarines off the coast of Australia. I think it's interesting. Sorry, I'm trying to clean my desk at the same time while we're having a chat here, because it's going to be a chat. Might as well multitask a little bit. So at this point, I have gone way off topic. Let's get back to where we were. The next press release is late May, and the construction halts because there's a general strike. It's kind of vague in this research, but from what I understand from there, I think the workers found out what's going on. Remember what I talked about earlier? When they were building the base, only general contractors were Australian. Everybody else, like the actual employees of the base, were essentially all American. And that's a big fucking problem. Australians kind of are nationalists in nature, which I don't view as a flaw. I actually am pretty nationalist myself, and I think a lot of people have a flawed view of nationalism. World Wars I and II were both caused by a very unhealthy dose of nationalism, but a healthy dose of nationalism is just a love of country. It's the belief that we should prioritize jobs in country for people that live in country. And a lot of Australians believe like that too. They don't go off the deep end and believe in World War and genocide and all that crazy shit, right? But they, kind of like me, they believe that if we have a job here in our country, we should have it with people that live here in our country, not people coming out of our country here to do that job. Call me an extremist, I suppose. Anyways, so the Australians at the time, now remember, this is the 60s. In America, we're having our hippie movement, but most of the world is just kind of post World War II trying to build up their countries, right? So a lot of people 20 years after the war in Australia, they're like, hey, dude, kind of want that job. Why are we giving it to Americans who kind of fucking destroy the whole world in the middle of a war? Let's be frank. That's kind of how the rest of the world viewed us. We weren't the good guys of World War II. Technically, Russia was. And nobody in America likes hearing that, because now Russia's the bad guy, and God forbid people can be the good guy and then the bad guy. It's almost like that's every fucking Hollywood movie ever. Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars. I'm just including that because my wife fucking hates Star Wars, okay? We're just going to put a little husband-wife rivalry in the pod. This episode is brought to you by men who bully their wives. Playfully. Jesus. Context is very important here. Anyways. So in June, the construction recommences. We're essentially 3 weeks into a strike. So at that point, the strike's been going on for a few weeks. Everybody says, fuck you guys. I want everything to go on here with our people. Now, their trade union then comes out and says, hey, man, I'll pay you more. And everybody immediately forgets their morals, as always. Mr. Reg Harris, I believe it's short for Reginald. We'll call him Reginald. Reginald Harris is a prominent resident in Alice Springs. He speaks out in support of the research facility, which is rare. He stated that he discovered that the facility was injecting a lot of finance and economic benefit into the town. He had discovered that 13 local companies were contracted to supply goods, labor, and services valued at over $250,000. This is the 60s. Maybe I'll do a little bit of an inflation calculator and have my wife put that up here. But I don't know what that's worth now, but obviously it's worth a hell of a lot more than it was then, right? So, um, keynotes, big things that are going to be thought about from this local gentleman is he's thinking, well, shit, they're bringing money into my town. Maybe I could ride on the coattails. Maybe I can make some money. So that's his thesis. So a survey of the residents there revealed an overwhelming support of this facility. There were 300 residents that were polled. I don't have the exact statistics. It just says overwhelming support in direct quotes. Construction had slowed down further due to extensive flooding as a result of torrential rains. As you guys know, Australia gets pretty good monsoons. So nothing surprised there. And it's in the middle of Australia where they have kind of some lowlands. They have a bunch of plateaus. Most of Australia is a plateau, but they also have some lowland and some grassland too. So let's talk about the next topic here. In July, the general contractor Noel G discloses that this was supposed to be a secret, and then he says that there was extensive drilling taking place at the facility. He then rebutted his own comment, saying that he had heard workers had drilled 2 water bores and that the facility would be self-sufficient, meaning that they would pump their own water into the facility. Pretty big deal. Mr. G further announces that the facility would have an unspecified number of buildings, mainly constructed out of concrete block with a little timber used. Now, why would that be? Why would you want flame retardant material in a place that already doesn't catch on fire? You know what I mean? These are just the types of questions I want you guys to ask about this podcast. You guys draw your own conclusions, but at the same time, I want to help you kind of get there, you know? What I've come to the conclusion of with this specific research, and again, I have to do so much more, which we're going to be doing together, but what I've kind of come to the conclusion now that this is one of those lizard people. Every person and every piece of material that I've read so far gets pretty deep into like UFOs and electromagnetic research, and one of them talks about lizard people, and we'll talk about that too because it's kind of fucking cool, I won't lie. So now the completion time of this branch was only supposed to take about 2 years. We're in July now. We're about a year in. Now let's talk about it. The information now is only briefly verified, and it's very short. We're going to talk about 28 years of history very shortly thereafter this. It looks like they had some delays again. So the Pine Gap became operational in 1970. This is 3 years after the start of the construction, or technically 4 years after the start of the construction from public knowledge. Now, reminder, a whistleblower claims that there was potentially a base there a full 15 years in advance, but there's not really any evidence of that. So take from that what you will. The information below is brief and not fully verified, and this will be updated in the near future as I complete the research. Now, I'm just going to say this never was updated. So, in 1970, Pine Gap becomes operational. Collins Radio of Dallas, Texas is the major company involved with the facility. 1974. The Australian government announces that Pine Gap is being controlled by the CIA. Unauthorized photographs and other information from inside the facility are reported, holy fuck, reported to have been sold to Russia. Jesus. In 1983, a protest against Pine Gap leads to the arrest of many people. 2 years later, in 85, an unconfirmed report of an unidentified aircraft traveling at erratic speeds buzzes a government employee and police officers 100 kilometers west of Alice Springs. It's about 60 miles. In 86, over 300 people arrested at a Pine Gap protest rally at the gates of Pine Gap. So this was well known in Australia. Notice how not many people here know about this at all. And reminder, there have been people that died here. There have been people that got fired. We fired their fucking prime minister. Let's talk about that. We had one of their prime ministers fired because he literally just fucking questioned us. And you don't run into that a lot. Actually, ever. Usually the CIA just kills the leader. Yep. Yep. They won't get you fired. So seeing that was really eye-opening. So we've had multiple arrests over multiple years at this facility in the 80s. In 1988, a local hot air balloon pilot is forced down when wind currents caused him to drift over Pine Gap land holdings. There were several tourists on board at the time. There are unconfirmed reports of minor injuries. In 1989, Pine Gap is officially declassified, supposedly. Security is reduced and much of Pine Gap's operations become public knowledge, supposedly. Pine Gap receives the name change to Joint Defense Space Research Facility, Pine Gap. Nobody calls it that. 1991, U.S. researchers report that Pine Gap is instrumental in the tracking of Iraq's Scud missiles and the guidance of the trajectory of the U.S. Patriot missiles. Also reports that satellite imagery from Pine Gap was monitoring the troop movements and other military of Iraq. That's where I want to talk about some fun shit. Okay, let's break this down bit by bit. What did that just say? It just said that we were talking about triangulating and tracking missile systems, right? Both allied and enemy. This was in the 90s. Missiles in the 90s went several thousand miles an hour. Missiles today go incrementally faster than that, but that's not necessarily the point. The point is, and I want you to ask your own questions here. The point is that 30 years before that, when UFOs were regularly being seen and researched and discussed, both in America and at that facility, how fast did they go? Pilots in Washington, fun fact, one of the very first modern UFO findings or spottings was here in the state of Washington. It happened by a local aviation pilot in Mount Rainier, and he was flying past Mount Rainier. He stated that something had passed his plane several times the speed that a jet could fly at the time. And for lack of better phrasing, that would be several thousand miles an hour. Now, what I'm getting at with this is if we had the technology in the 90s to track missile systems that now are leading cutting edge material that we would track nuclear armaments with today, with the Russia war and Ukraine and all the bullshit that's going on, where did we get that technology from? And what was it first designed on? Because shit that we launched in the 60s was not that fast yet. At all. Yet this technology was refined enough to the point that before the internet was past dial-up, we could track missile systems over 6,000 miles away in real time. You want to talk about that? You want to unpack that? I don't know. You tell me. You tell me. I don't really want to unpack that too much. I like the whole alien thing, but I try not to go down it too much because we are not alone. And I think only a very arrogant human being would say that we are alone. And there's forces out there that don't fucking like us. So I don't really like the alien topic. It does spook me a little bit. So in the 90s, they are talking about rumors that speculated after that fact. This is 1996 now to get us back on topic. Rumors begin to speculate when witnesses alleged to have seen a triangular-shaped aircraft crash or land rapidly at an area west of Pine Gap. A local man looking for the site reports that he is stopped and expelled by Pine Gap security. The alleged area of land is on private property outside of Pine Gap's holdings. They had no authority. I'll state that again. They had no right to tell this man what he could be doing. November 1996. Five Eyes countries agree to exchange by default all signals intelligence that they gather. Okay, so everything that we've ever encountered, we've shared with these guys, and they've shared with us. And I think that that's worth kind of just touching on briefly, so that way you guys can develop some context further. So the Five Eyes Alliance, it's what the original Pine Gap is, right? Remember, I talked about earlier, we were supposed to see about 40%, and it goes like this. Like if you hold a globe up, it would go kind of like this from Australia, up and around, and then it tightens up against the Arctic Circle. About 40% of the world is covered like that from that Pine Gap Research Facility. And we share the intel with the other four eyes, right? The Five Eyes, not eye like indigo, or eye like eyeball, right? Eye like eyeball, the Five Eyes are the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United States. So basically, all of the English-speaking countries of the world, primarily. Most countries do speak English as a secondary language, but primarily, those are your bread and butters. So it says the UFO hoax was perpetrated by a local youth launching hot air balloons. Rumors speculate UFOs until the cause of lights in the sky is discovered. 1997, further rumors began to speculate when a woman and her son claimed they saw a blue glowing light rise and then descend over Pine Gap. Now, I'm going to be fucking real for a minute. The Phoenix lights were a big phenomenon back in I think it was the late 90s in Phoenix, Arizona. And they've been spotted still to this day. When I was in college, I witnessed them, and I got it not technically on recording. I was FaceTiming my wife, and then I turned my phone around, and she saw the whole thing, and they fucking appeared and everything. So that's also not even our only UFO experience in Arizona. We have a fucking few. It's hot out there, but um, I personally don't disclaim UFO or discredit UFO research until I see definitive proof. And the reason why is because there's so much good technology out there where you can fake it, right? But there was a good time frame in the early 2000s to late 2000s, or maybe even early 2010s before Photoshop was super good, where you could definitively tell, like, shit, that's a grainy image, but that's clearly not an airplane, you know? And so when things like that are popping up in the 90s, I don't know, dude. We didn't really have the technology to fake shit like that. The next thing I would like to talk about, 1998, the gentleman says, I established my Pine Gap research pages and posted them on the internet. As a result, some Pine Gap executives don't talk to me anymore. So now this guy's got a website, but I think it's been shut down now. Let me see if I can open it. 404 error. And this is why I use this web page that I use. And I'll show people that go to my Patreon when I get it up. When I get it up, I will show you guys how to access this material, because the only way you can do it is visiting virtual encyclopedias. And virtual encyclopedias are pretty fucking hard to find on the internet, because they come off as like really shitty, cheap websites. And they usually are. But they're run by nice individuals who just like to capture data in real time. What I'm saying by that is they scrub the internet, and when things are posted, they fucking post them onto the virtual encyclopedia. So then if they ever get scrubbed, you can find them again later on. Like this. This is a direct excerpt from this guy's website. And if you click the website that it's from, the literal source material says 404 error not found. So there you go. I like this type of shit. Now, based off of his timeline, it sounds like this was posted either in 1998 or the early 2000s. So that also explains why this material looks super cheap, because it's during the old internet where websites are really just scroll feeds and, basically what Facebook's based off of. You just scroll and interact, right? So we're going to talk into some conspiracies that have come out of Pine Gap. One of them is, this one's one of my favorites. This one's talked about from Zen Gardner. See if I can find his website. Damn. It says, sorry, this account has been canceled or suspended. So this is from March 26, 2012. It says, I just happened on this information while researching something else, as is so often the case. The infamous Pine Gap Black Op military information gathering installation turns out to be nowhere else but in Central America, right near the location of the recent rogue Australian earthquake that was a 5.7 magnitude that shook people up. Weird. There's more. So here's the quake location. It's 26.068 degrees south, 132.123 degrees east. For my military and seafaring people out there, I know I'm butchering that. You can literally suck me right off, okay? I'm not pretending to be better than anybody with that information. I'm just reading the digits off so you can then triangulate it yourself, okay? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'm willing to admit that. Still suck my dick. Anyways, the Pine Gap location. So we're going to say that again. 26068 south, 132.123 east. The Pine Gap location, 23.799 degrees south, 133.737 degrees east. So I'll be frank, it's not like directly on top of it, but it's pretty close. This is where nearby they have that 5-mile deep antenna going towards the Earth. Now, the earthquake depth was 6.6 miles. This is reminiscent of the quakes caused by fracking drills in the US. If the Earth is activating and the cores and plates are moving, this type of deep Earth technology is going to contribute in some way or form. You can count on it. People should know better. kind of all part of their plan, this guy's saying. You can't keep harming the planet and thinking that she won't rebel, especially with the empowering vibrational radiation pelting us in every way from the core of the galaxy, that's in turn activating the sun in all energetic fields. And there's no way these manipulative morons are going to be able to control it, despite their insane imaginations. According to this gentleman, the Australian federal parliament members do not even know what Pine Gap is. As among the cabinet members, only a small number of initiates have a vague idea of what this is even about. That's pretty cool. Some people say that Pine Gap is the deepest drilling hole in Australia, more than 8,000 meters, that's 5 miles. Such a hole is likely used as an underground antenna to be able to recharge the batteries of submarines in the Pacific and Indian Ocean through ELF broadcast. That is crazy. Such a gigantic antenna could be used to generate the gigantic stationary wave around Earth. Touching back on that briefly, the Wardenclyffe Tower, Nikola Tesla. He wanted to have worldwide free-flowing energy. Now, it appears that Pine Gap is chasing that same research. However, they don't want to fucking give it out for free. They want to use it to control us. Nothing new in that regard. So we know that HARP exists, and HARP is going to be its own episode, but HARP is HAARP. So HAARP is weather modification. We had it patented in the 50s, and we got it banned as a war crime in the 60s. Okay, so, or maybe the 70s. It was in the Vietnam War. I'm not sure when it happened, but Forrest Gump made a joke about how it rained and then it never stopped. That was HARP. No lie. You can fucking Google this. Weather modification is a real thing, and people that think the climate crisis is not something that can be easily staged are fucking idiots. I'm not saying that it can't also be human pollution, but I do also think that there is technology out there to manipulate the climate, because we had it 70 years ago and it's only gotten better. So I sadly believe that only a very ignorant and egotistical person would say that it can't also be true. I'm not saying the climate crisis isn't real. I'm just saying there's also a very real possibility that it could be manufactured. So don't kill me, climate people. I'm just saying what I've researched, and if I'm wrong, again, I want to be. I really fucking want to be wrong. Because I don't want to be right about any of this. This shit scares me. That's why I talk about it. Anyways, so HARP. A lot of people think that HARP is involved. The reason why is because of that weather modification I was talking about. We have HARP facilities all around the world. The actual only real HARP facility is in Alaska, but we have sister facilities around the world that are under different code names. Let's talk about the underground base here. According to John Lear, William Cooper, and several other researchers, guys, time out. William Cooper, rest in fucking peace. This is the man that radicalized me. And I haven't read his book fully because it scared the shit out of me. I read it when I was 12 years old and I put it down and I never picked it back up again. But he wrote a book called Behold a Pale Horse. And it's a biblical reference talking about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. William Cooper wrote this book talking about the impending societal collapse of America. And this took place in the 80s. He was killed in a police shootout during a traffic stop. And I don't want to sugarcoat this or be a little bit abrasive here, but he was just a guy getting pulled over. And I know that we're at a political time where sadly young men and young women are dying in traffic stops by police, but this was during a time in society where that didn't fucking happen. So, as I always say, take with that information what you will. But William Cooper wrote the book that radicalized me. And that book was Behold the Pale Horse, and he talks about a lot of crazy shit, which I'll probably discuss at another time too. You can no longer buy this book in its unedited format. I do have it in its unedited format, but I only have it digitally. So to share that with you would be very fucking hard to do. It's over 500 pages long. However, if anybody wants that, I can try my best to get it to you. The unedited version just includes stuff about Jewish people. And I'll just be frank, I am Jewish. So I can talk about those types of topics without having a racial bias or ethnic cleansing type of Nazi rhetoric. I do think that certain people of certain natures are trying to run the world, but I don't think that that's the case en masse. A lot of Nazis do, and that's the fucking problem. They just pick up on Hitler rhetoric from 100 years ago and they run with it. William Cooper kind of did the same thing, but he also hit on a lot of really important notes. He talks about how a lot of people in politics are Jewish despite only being 2% of the population. These are good things to at least think about. Why is that the case? It's a little bit culty, right? And that's just the same way with the KKK. They're Christians and they're very culty. Let's be fucking real, okay? It's not a bad thing to denounce bad people doing bad things. It doesn't mean we hate the religion. It just means we hate the people using that religion to be shitbags. So back to the main thesis here. William Cooper's a great man. He died in a police shootout, and he blew the lid off on a lot of shit. He blew it off on JFK. He blew it off on alien research, deep state. It's deep. Like I said, the guy died for writing it. So he was talking about underground research bases. So was Phil Schneider. Now, Phil Schneider's been denounced as kind of like a loony bin, but I don't know, dude. He died from suicide, and the circumstances of his death were illegible. Like there's certain suicides that just can't have happened, you know. And Phil Schneider's one of them. He talks about flat out having a fucking war with aliens underground at Dulce, New Mexico, which is another base very similar to Area 51. Most people think that after Roswell, the majority of the research was taken to Dulce. Anyways, so let's talk about what William Cooper talked about. William Cooper, John Lear, and several other researchers, most people know who John Lear is, no introduction. Several other researchers the U.S. government may have made a pact with a non-human race as early as 1933. This is kind of public knowledge for most of the deep statist conspiracy theorists out there. According to some, this race was not human as we know it, yet it claims to have its origin on Earth several thousands of years ago. Now, again, this is related to Pine Gap. Just bear with me, it might get a little bit long-winded here. Some sources allege that this predatory race is of a Neosaurian nature. This has led others to suggest that the dinosaurs which ruled the surface of the Earth in prehistoric times may not have become entirely extinct, as commonly believed, but that certain of the more intelligent and biped hominid mutations, this means up on 2 feet, humanoid style, mutations of that race developed a form of intellectual thought. There is a race of dinosaur called the Stenak. We're going to put it up on here for you guys to read because it looks like shit. We're going to say Stenonychosaurus. Suck my pee-pee. Was, according to paleontologists, it was about 3.5 feet, 4 feet tall. And guess what? It had opposable thumbs. We like that. So the reason why I talk about the opposable thumbs is because that's the only thing in the animal kingdom by all metrics of science. That and consciousness are the only things that make us better than every other fucking animal in the world. Dolphins have consciousness and apes have, well, thumbs. And both of them are very, very strong in their own domesticated kingdoms, if you will. So imagine if they had both. They'd fuck shit. Pure and simple. They'd fuck shit. So they're thinking that there's a potential, lizard people. They're thinking the lizard peoples might have potentially been related to the bipedal hominid style dinosaurs from the saurid races of dinosaurs. They're only 4 feet tall, and the paleontologists of today regularly attribute their skin to be grayish green. 3.5 feet, 4 feet tall, they have opposable thumbs, and they're smart. They walk on 2 feet. Anyway, we have people that think that there may be underground bases in Pine Gap too because of that whole 5-mile antenna thing. I personally do believe that definitely takes place there because of Dulce, New Mexico, because of William Cooper, because of Area 51, because of Bob Lazar. All 4 of those things have rung the same bells. They talk about underground bases, electromagnetic propulsion systems. They talk about compartmentalization, which I told you about earlier. And they talk about aliens and the potential for alien conflict as well as alien peace agreements with the United States military. All of those things ring a lot of bells and they freak me the fuck out. When you have everything kind of match the same pitch and everything looks the same, all of the writing on the wall matches, there's a reason for that. I very much do think that there's something going on at Pine Gap, and I do think that it's related to the lizard people. And I don't know if I necessarily believe in the lizard people, but fuck, dude, there's some pretty compelling evidence out there if you go looking for it. Now, the Illuminati is, everybody's saying that they're involved. I don't know if they're necessarily involved there. One of the main theories is that they have made an underground base at Pine Gap in case nuclear war breaks out. And the reason why, and the argument is sound, I won't lie. But the reason why people allege that if a nuclear war breaks out, nobody's going to target Australia. And they also think that because of the sheer amount of underground bases that we do have in Australia, that it would be a ripe target for the world elite to go and hide in if there was an impending collapse of society. I don't know if I believe in all that. I do believe that there's underground bases and that we could store probably several thousand people, but I don't think that we could restart civilization by doing that. I don't think that that's efficable. Rich people like their elbow room, and they're not going to live underground, bro. They're fucking not. If you think a billionaire is going to live underground while the whole world nukes itself, you are on crack cocaine. That's the only reason we haven't nuked ourselves yet, because the rich people won't allow it to happen. And if that upsets you or de-romanticizes war for you, I'm sorry, but that's just the fucking case. Billionaires haven't allowed us to nuke each other yet because it's not in the interest of their pockets. Once it is, hide. I know it's a very nihilistic worldview, but once you start researching the shit I do, you know everything's about money, and that's shit. But it's the same reason why we don't have cures for cancer, and it's the same reason why veterans live on the fucking streets. You know, there's not money in saving them. That sucks. So, anyway, I got depressing. As William Cooper has stated elsewhere, whether the aliens exist or not makes no difference, since the idea of the existence of a non-human alien race is part and parcel of the one world totalitarian plans. This talks about like Project Bluebeam, Operation Mockingbird, a couple of things like that. Okay, I found a really good excerpt. I just want to read the whole thing top to bottom. And this is from French to English, so of course there is some slight translational error, I'm sure. But I'm just going to read it as the quote says. This is from Dr. Jean-Francois Gill from the article titled Pine Gap Base, World Context. And this was written by Lucien Cometa and then later translated by Dr. Jean Gill. In order to understand the case of the Pine Gap U.S. base near Alice Springs, Australia better, I feel compelled to give you some explanations beforehand. I hope these explanations will help you to increase the general awareness of the extraordinary importance that facility has for mankind. The majority of people all over the world are not lingering in doubt as to whether UFOs or ETs are real. They know they are real. Here in 1989, of course, that's when it took place. Here in 1989, no one questions their existence. The case for UFOs and ETs aroused passions, controversies, and grandstanding for many years. Some of it has not been quite rational. The matter being relatively settled, public opinion should cool down. It is with a serene and clear mind that we ought to be thinking of our future relationship with the peoples from space. Fucking firmly agree. Put your ego aside and let's fucking be friendly with these people because they can end our lives. They could end the way of life. However, the public mind is not at peace. It vaguely feels that the governments are hiding something real big, and it wonders where our leaders are going to lead mankind. During the process of research and study of UFOs and aliens, researchers who do not take the explanations of the scientific establishment at face value have discovered unsettling facts. These facts have started the lifting off of the lid of the cover-up. The value and the prestige of their sources of information do not leave any doubt about the truthfulness of these reports. The main outlines are summarized below. Okay. I talked about the 3 bases in Australia. One is in Nurringer, which is in South Australia. The other one's in New South Wales. And the third is, of course, Pine Gap. That's what this next little bit of the excerpt is about. So I'm just going to, pass through that real quick. It is said that under Pine Gap, direct quote, is the deepest drilling hole in Australia. Some say that it has an enormous nuclear generator to supply energy of a new type of transceiver. It seems, too, that there is a high-powered, high-voltage plasma accelerator which may be put to use to produce a death ray. Tesla. We always come back to that guy. How fucking great is that? Rest in peace to a goat. He's from Venus. You can suck my penis. Put it on a t-shirt. Or quite simply, to feed a plasma gun. All of this is not as incredible as it sounds. It is now known that the U.S. base at West Cape near Exmouth Gulf in Western Australia has an older type of this transceiver used at Pine Gap, which is used to send electronic current to submerged U.S. submarine who trail a wire antenna. Several times, locals have seen white discs about 30 feet in diameter in the process of being unloaded from large U.S. cargo planes at the airport serving Pine Gap. Those discs have the United States Air Force emblem on them. Or, USAF. I think that means United States Armed Forces. Somebody check me on that. I'm sorry. It just says USAF. Emblem on them. It seems likely that discs are assembled and based at Pine Gap. The number of discs seen at night leaves no doubt in anyone's mind. That's a big thing right there. Everybody's saying, hey, dude, we've seen a shit ton of these, okay? An amazing quantity of furniture has been delivered by plane from the United States. On the other hand, Pine Gap is well known to be one of the most important control centers for spy satellites. We talked about that. Let's touch base later. They have enormous computers which are connected to their American and Australian center counterparts, which collect all of the information from those countries, which I did talk about briefly, but important to touch on again. It takes information not only about finance and tech, but on every aspect of the life of the average citizen. That's some big brother shit. These computers at Pine Gap are also evidently connected to similar mainstreams in Guam, in Krugersdorp, South Africa, and at the Amundsen Scott U.S. base at the South Pole. I can't name any of this shit. If you want to look it up, feel free. Um, Let us say, incidentally, that the employees, more than 1,200 of the U.S. base in South Africa, all claim to be members of the U.S. consular mission. It may be worthy of note that at the base at the South Pole is located on a sensitive magnetic spot of our planet, that it holds the exact same assets as Pine Gap, and that all of the information about most of the average citizens of Western Europe is stored there in memory banks tens of meters under the ice pack. That's scary. A statement made by the Australian Premier in about 1987, assuring that France must disappear from the Pacific, from the Kerguelen Rouge, and from Antarctica, sheds light on the importance of this polar base for the Anglo-Saxon world. The most disquieting fact about Pine Gap may be that the employees working on the base, and especially those earmarked for duty on electromagnetic propulsion projects, have undergone brainwashing and even implementation of intracranial devices. This is the type of shit that Elon Musk is talking about today. And they were doing this 40 fucking years ago. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. It spooks the shit out of me. Now, I'm going to take a break from that excerpt and just tell you about one of the men who died at Pine Gap. I don't remember his name, but there was a researcher who died. He had a heart attack after leaving Pine Gap one evening, and he was healthy as an absolute horse. I can't find his name. And then there was the Australian Prime Minister who was sacked. He was literally taken out. His name is Gough Whitlam. The 1975 Australian constitutional crisis, also known as simply as the dismissal, culminated on 11 November 1975. On 11 November 75, Gough Whitlam, and that's Gough. It's a very weird spelling. His name is Gough Whitlam. He was fired. Okay, he was fired, and they claim that the Australian government made this firing. But, and dude, this is from literally Google, okay? Allegations suggest that the United States Central Intelligence Agency played a role in the 1975 Australian constitutional crisis, which culminated in Whitlam's dismissal. The theory claims that the CIA influenced Governor General Kerr to dismiss Whitlam due to the alleged U.S. Government dissatisfaction with his policies. It goes deeper than this. He was a very public denier of Pine Gap's importance, and he specifically called for it to be dismantled multiple times, saying that it was not good during peacetime to spy on half the world. And I fucking agree with him. We shouldn't be spying on everybody. I'm sorry. I just don't think we should be doing that. Call me crazy. So yeah, I wanted to just take a break from the excerpt because I didn't like the intracranial devices shit. Kind of bugged me a little bit. Because everybody's like, oh my god, it's so cool. And it's like, no, it's kind of scary. Actually, people don't realize the world we're heading towards. And I podcast about this for fun, but occasionally you find shit that you don't like to find. And you're like, fuck, we're kind of there. You know, like we talk about George Orwell's 1984. We talk about The Giver. I forget who authored that. We talk about Fahrenheit 451, Lord of Flies, like all of these dystopian novels. And, you know, we all read them as kids, but we're like, oh, that'll never happen. But what if it does? You know, like, I'm really worried about that type of shit. And I hope that it never, ever happens. So, that's where I'm at. But, yeah, let's get back to where we were on that excerpt because I'm not too spooked about it no more. Now, the true point of brainwashing these individuals, along with the ruthless attempts to implement the cover-up, really advanced military technology, will become clear at the end of this argument or article. For me, it all began with the construction of the new Parliament building in Canberra, which cost billions of dollars. Billions. Australia only has 18 million inhabitants, yet it apparently treated itself to a building far beyond its means, supposedly to accommodate its government, even if the old Parliament building is perfectly fine. This new building, enormous, immense, and magnificent, would easily fit the need of the USSR or the United States, both of which hundreds of millions of citizens live in. Of course, that was not surprising. Let me see here. This wasn't. Oh, okay. He said that buildings puzzled me, and I started to talk about it one day until I bumped into an Englishman who told me that the Australian premier, Bob Hawke, was a Rhodes Scholar, and the Scholars of Rhodes are like it's like a secret society. It's not typically as scary as all the other ones are, but they typically get a bad rap because they are a secret society. I don't know much more about them though, so don't ask me. And as such, he worked towards the setting up of a one world government. And this new parliament building was likely had something to do with it. Sometime after, he stumbled upon a pamphlet published by the Human Rights Organization. Talked about a group of about 100 people well placed on high finance, politics, and the judiciary branch of big businesses, or and big businesses. I keep bunching two lines together because the font's really small here, so I keep thinking like one word on the bottom line is in the middle of the top. I'm sorry, guys. The font here is like 10 here. Um, okay, so there are 100 people placed in very specific locations in finance, politics, judiciary, and big business. This group is called the Club of Rome. And I can send you guys links on that too, but that's a whole other sidebar that I don't really want to get into right now. But the Club of Rome is just the deep state. It's similar to the Skull and Bones organization. It's similar to what most people call the Illuminati. I'm just going to be fucking blunt. The Illuminati is the tip of the iceberg. It's just the name of the deep state. It is not an actual thing anymore. The Illuminati, as an actual group, ended over 100 years ago. It's been split off into a bunch of different things now. And that's what we know now, right? So just take that into consideration. When people say the Illuminati, they're using like an umbrella term that means just the deep state. The Club of Rome is a very specific version of that deep state, but I don't think they're the highest up ones. The highest up ones are the 13 families. 13 families are the ones that really control the world, and there's only one good family in that, and that's the Kennedys. Fun fact, the Kennedys are a deep state family. That's why 4 of them have been murdered by our government. And that's all there is to that. Okay. Kennedys are good. I'm voting for Robert this election. You do what you want to do, but hey, you can't have your government kill 4 politicians and say that they're not good guys. Just fucking saying. Um, anyways, let me see here. Oh, so he talked to Peter Sawyer, who gave a lecture. He says he was a former high-ranking Australian civil servant, which exposed a certain number of facts he had noticed while in office. He talked in particular of a telephone exchange in Canberra called Deakin Centre. This exchange, built in concrete with 4-foot thick walls, cost hundreds of millions of dollars. It is outfitted with numerous computers arrayed on 4 levels. When he tried to find out why such equipment was needed in a country of only 18 million, he discovered that those computers were connected to all the banks, to every post office, to all telephones, and to all of the police stations and custom houses, to every arrival and departure desk for air and sea travelers, and also and above all, to the other data centers collecting data on private citizens in the United States and as well as Europe. Your shit was never private, Frau. Never private. That sucks. We all think our information is private. And I use VPNs the majority of the time, but as I've kind of told you before, VPNs don't really solve shit. If somebody wants to find you, um, yeah, people are going to find you if they want to find you. Pure and simple. So it's better to just stay safe and protect yourself in any other way you want to protect yourself. But trying to stay offline doesn't necessarily mean you're offline. Just going to be honest. That facility on Deakin Street is therefore a center where all the data pertaining to every citizen of the Western world ends up being stored. All financial, economic, political, and military information, as well as the information of every inhabitant on those or of those countries. As a matter of course, all people in Australia are also put on file, kept up with, and labeled. Peter Sawyer discovered also that the president of the Rockefeller Foundation, damn, there's just big name after big name on this shit, discovered that the president of the Rockefeller Foundation came for a lengthy stay in Australia to supervise in person the construction of 20 luxury residences in Canberra. The Australian government footed the bill. In the wonderful setting of a national park, where legally nobody is allowed to build. Damn. The investigations led by Sawyer exposed, first of all, that the new Parliament building is meant to accommodate the world government to be. And second, that the 20 luxury residences will be allocated to the different foreign members of that government. Why choose Canberra as the headquarters of the new world government? Simply because Australia is a peaceful country? I don't know. They have very few natives. Actually, that's a good point. A lot of people talk about how the white man decimated the Aborigines of Australia. And I typically don't pull the race card there, but dude, the decimation of Australia is arguably worse than the decimation of America. I mean, they fucked them people up bad. And we did too. I'm not trying to say one is worse than the other. Both are genocides. And neither are good, but nobody really talks about Australia. We had our reckoning as a country with all the stupid shit that we did, but I don't really hear a lot of people talk about all the stupid shit Australia did. Might be time to have a chat. Um, so yeah, they had very few natives that would likely turn rebellious, and above all, it's an English-speaking country. No other English-speaking country can offer the safety Australia will provide at the taking over by one world government. In America and Europe, uprisings are much more than likely. In South America, is not only not English speaking, but its fondness for revolutions and social disturbances is well known. Australia is thus the ideal place for the undertaking. Now, I'm not going to go deep down that rabbit hole because one world government, I don't like that topic. I don't at all. I think we were already on that slippery slope, and there's not much we can do to stop it besides love one another and say fuck the government. But saying that isn't received well by the government. So I'm just going to summarize at the end of this. It says, at this point, the usefulness of bases like Pine Gap will become obvious. If a global confrontation is going to break out, those bases will serve as a place of safety for the politicians and their staff, as well as the international financiers, their family, and their friends. If no confrontation breaks out, the financiers will simply adapt a saintly attitude and offer substitution of all currencies by plastic cards, ensuring true equality for all, the abolition of all ownership rights, and the setting up of one world government that will ensure peace. The masses will be convinced that it is necessary to ensure peace and social justice by any means. Now, we already see this with local politicians. We already see this with world politicians. They talk about NATO. They talk about the UN. They talk about, us versus them. Excuse me. They talk about, we got to get Russia so we can become a better world. What does that mean? We're a bunch of countries and none of us all agree on anything. Russia's just today's enemy. Just like global terrorism was yesterday's enemy. Just like fucking Vietnam was the enemy before that. Or technically Russia was the enemy before that, and then Vietnam, and then Korea, and then Germany. We always have a fucking new enemy. I'm just gonna be real. That's how the world works. So I don't really know if we will ever get to a one world government because there always is that next fucking enemy. And that's kind of why I don't like the topic. It scares the fuck out of me, but I also don't know if it would happen. So we're kind of there, we're kind of not there. It's a mess. It really is. But to summarize what we've talked about so far today, we have a base that claims it's been around since 1967. However, whistleblowers say it goes back at least 10 years before that. We have spottings of UFOs. We have spottings of aliens. And on top of that, a lot of people online think that this might be a place where lizard people are working with the world government to establish essentially a nuclear holocaust bunker. And if that's the case, I'm freaked out. But let's dive into what I think is really the case, because this is where a lot of people have actually asked for me to give some insight. I know Pine Gap exists because I've seen a lot of evidence of it. Recently, like literally a month ago, a YouTuber got busted trying to get in. It's very real. It's I don't think the lizard people thing is going on. I just don't. I do think that aliens are involved. I don't really know if I believe in lizard people though. I just really don't know. I don't, and I'm not gonna pretend that I do. I've seen evidence for, but I've seen so it's like flat Earth. I can't believe in flat Earth because the people that believe in flat Earth are just so fucking stupid. You know, most of the people that believe in lizard people, I can't tell if they're serious or if they're taking it as a joke. So I don't know where I'm at. I have seen some evidence that shape shifting is definitely a real thing. I think that aliens are definitely a real thing. I just don't know if the lizard people are. I think that the Greys are more a real concept because there's vast amounts of evidence for them. I mean, I feel like everybody nowadays has an experience with the Greys. Like we've all seen their UFOs, we've all heard their stories. It's literally ET, like it's so hyper normalized. So I think I believe in that. And if if there's entities working with our government, I would say it would be those ones. Every bit of research I've found off the lizard people, it's like it portrays them as aggressive. It portrays them as the bad guys. And if there's anybody that's at the bases in Pine Gap, it would be either the Greys or the Venetians. Like Tesla's people. And I do think that Tesla's people are involved in this task because they're literally using his fucking research, and like they're admitting to you that they're using his fucking research. So I do genuinely think that there is some otherworldly entities that are down in Australia working with our government. I do think that there are rich people that live down there and maybe have some personal hideouts there, but I don't think in mass this is going to be like our world restart button. If you want to know what I think it is, I think it's literally Area 52. I think we're studying UFOs down there, crashed alien craft. And as the excerpt said earlier, we have our own UFOs, dude. And we have for decades. I'm going to Google this and it's going to blow your fucking mind, but I forgot what it's called, so I just need to spell it out. It's called an LRV. Yeah. Lenticular re-entry vehicles, bro. It's going to blow your mind. But we've literally had UFOs. Where is this one? Here, I'll send this to my wife so she can post it on here. But we've had lenticular re-entry vehicles since the 50s. And once you see them, you're gonna be like, huh, underneath that looks pretty fucking similar to a UFO, right? And if this is almost 70 years ago, just put your shit together, guys. Bob Lazar talks about in the 80s about how he worked on propulsion systems that were otherworldly. This was 40 years ago. And he was talking about how they were able to reverse engineer some of them. So I'm going to ask you guys to read between the lines a little bit. It's starting to get a little bit long-winded here. But I genuinely do think that there are aliens involved at Pine Gap. I genuinely think that we are reverse engineering aircraft down there. And I genuinely think that we need to get a fucking research team down there ASAP. We need to stop putting bases in foreign countries. Pure and simple. It's so fucking expensive. I'm tired of it. We have so much taxation that's going on in this country, and we have I think like 10,000 military bases worldwide, and we do not need even half of them. Pretending that we do is retarded. That's bad phrasing. Pretending that we do is ignorant. We should not be using um, physical installations when we live in the world of digital monitoring and age. We don't need to be boots on the ground. We don't need to be invading natural spaces in the world. I don't want to sound like a hippie too much, but we should be leaving the world a little bit alone in that regard. um, and that's that. Lenticular reentry vehicles, reverse engineering spacecraft. I think it's all happening, but the lizard people. If you want to know my utmost thing, there's already been proof that we've killed people to cover up the conspiracy. There's been proof that we fired people to cover up the conspiracy. I mean, bro, prime ministers are those are pretty high politicians, okay? Like It's not just your mayor of small town USA. That's a very high politician. Having that guy be fired and then Google flashlighting saying, "Hey, dude, it might have been the CIA." Like, bro, that is in your face. Okay, so there's a lot of shit that goes on in Pine Gap. My only thing I don't believe in, I don't believe in lizard people. There you go. There you go. I believe in every fucking other thing that happened here. And I'm actually going to continue to research this one. I might do a follow-up episode later on, but I, humbly speaking, don't have any further things to provide in this topic. Okay. So without further ado, I would like to talk about what I'm going to discuss next. And I actually haven't decided yet. So um, if you guys find anything that you would like for me to discuss, please let me know. I might have to take a break for a while and do some TikToks and smaller form content just because, simply put, you guys want some longer episodes, which I really want to provide for you. But I'll be so honest. It's really hard to research all of these things in 1 week and then put out over an hour's worth of content about it. So I'm going to try to find a topic that's a little bit more surface level or something easier for me to understand, or not easier for me to understand, something that I'm maybe already more well read on. If you have something that you'd like to discuss, let's do it. I think soon I'm going to start having some guests on the show. I have 2 microphones, actually. It's kind of cool. Let me pull it out. But I've got 2 microphones, so I can share with another individual. And depending on the range, I haven't done any, shooting the shit, testing it out. I tested it out the very first night with Kenzie. But that's the only time I did it. Hopefully I didn't stop recording. My phone just went on low battery. So yeah, what I was saying though is these things are pretty tight. So you just put them on like this, We just got it online, and now it should be recording. It's probably gonna make my sound a little fucked here for a moment. There, I just wanted to turn that off because I didn't want my sound to sound like shit. But yeah, so I got a new mic now. I think I'm gonna have some guests on soon. I've got some friends that are pretty conspiratorial and they like to talk about the deep stuff too. So maybe I might have a podcast about that. But I don't know. I really don't know. It's open season. You guys let me know what you want me to see or you want me to talk about. And in the meantime, I might give you a little filler episode about something that I like. Might talk about some baseball, honestly, because the season is officially here and I'm stoked about it. We might just have a general episode. So without further ado, guys, you guys have yourself a good one. I'm going to get towards, of course, uploading this to the wife so she can edit it. And other than that, you guys stay safe. We talk about some crazy shit together. So make sure you're on the next episode. Have a good one. Talk to you later. Bye.